Hello and welcome to a On This Day in Canadian Military History reaction video. My name is Brad St.Croix. I have a PhD in history where I focused on Canadian military history, which of course is quite applicable to this channel and what I do with all kinds of different things on here, but also to the subject matter today. Going to be looking at a video I found on YouTube about Juno Beach. I don't really know anything about it. I took a quick look at the comments and they seem very positive, and then people are bringing attention to Juno Beach, which is always a good thing, but I don't know much else about it. The channel seems to focus on history and generally, so that's a good thing. So I'm going to take a look and see how it goes. Not sure really what to expect with this one, to be honest, but we'll see. Canadian footage start. That sounds good.
Most students of World War II know that there were 5 invasion beaches included in Operation Overlord. There are numerous writings concerning Omaha Beach, where the 1st and 29th U.S. Infantry Division suffered heavily at the hands of the defenders. The successful landings by the 4th U.S. Infantry Division at Utah Beach are also well covered.
True.
But far less has been written about the other North American beachhead that day,
Juno
Beach.
That's true, generally.
Which was assigned to the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division and the 2nd Canadian Armored Brigade.
This is all Canadian footage, too, by the
January
way.
1944, the senior officers who would command the cross-channel attack arrived in England and reviewed the tentative plans for the invasion. Eisenhower and Montgomery agreed that the invasion forces needed to be strengthened to ensure the establishment of a beachhead, and so the 3rd Canadian Infantry Division was added to the invasion contingent.
Yep.
Tank support would be provided by the 2nd Canadian Armored Brigade. Juno Beach was a 5-mile strip of low, flat, sandy countryside. In some places, there were 10-foot-high dunes behind the beaches. The villages along the beach were all protected by concrete seawalls that would prove an obstacle to assault troops.
True.
So too with the underwater offshore reef that ran in front of the beach.
Big problem with the reefs. Big problem.
Manning the Atlantic Wall along Juno Beach was the 431st Ost Battalion and the German 716th Infantry Division. Formed from older personnel in April 1941, the division had been sent directly to Normandy and remained there until D-Day. All personnel had been trained in coast defense tactics, but the division was not highly rated by Allied intelligence. Nevertheless, the least motivated troops sheltered within concrete emplacements and armed with automatic weapons, mortars, and artillery had often given a good account of themselves against attacking troops with little or no protection. Allied intelligence also reported that the 12th SS Panzer Division was within a day's march of the beach.
Oh, did they ever?
The presence of the experienced and fully operational 21st Panzer Division was less than half a day's travel from Juno Beach. On a cloudy morning with a wind from the west-northwest and moderate waves reaching nearly a foot high, the bombardment of Juno Beach began. As would happen on other beaches, particularly Omaha Beach, the aerial bombardment largely missed Juno Beach due to cloud cover and increasing dust from the bombing itself. The naval guns, on the other hand, didn't have the power to destroy the thick concrete defenses on the beach.
Okay, so that's often said about the bombardment for Overlord on all the beaches. This lack of power, lack of accuracy, all of that stuff. There's misconceptions about a lot of that. And what the different navies said they could provide. They told the planners that they probably couldn't take out these emplacements, particularly with a limited number of vessels, but that they could make the defenders keep their heads down as the assaults began. It wasn't necessarily about destruction of these obstacles and all these emplacements, like you can see the WN numbers on the map there. It wasn't necessarily about that they could provide a cover to keep the defenders occupied while the assault went in, kind of like the same idea with a creeping barrage sort of idea to keep the enemy's head pinned down while you move on them. And again, of course, the documented, the inaccuracy of Allied bombing during the war is very well documented. I don't really need to talk about that, but that's, again, something to consider here.
Instead, it was hoped that the bombardment would stun the defenders long enough for the infantry to get close enough to eliminate them.
Yeah,
as the barrage lifted.
Just as I said, yeah.
Despite the impressive sound and fury of the bombardment, little was accomplished, except in a few isolated cases where weapons had been put out of action by direct hits. The defenses generally were still in action when the fire plan had been completed, and while troops were being landed.
True.
Because of tide and beach conditions, the landing times for each assault beach varied slightly.
Yep.
On Juno Beach, the conditions, including the need for sufficient water over the offshore reef to allow the assault craft to sail over it, made the Canadian landing the last scheduled.
Yep.
In the 7th Infantry Brigade sector, all the tanks were carried ashore by their landing craft. Most of the tanks stopped on the beach, deflated their waterproofing, and then opened fire in support of their infantry. Company C of the 1st Canadian...
What? No. The 1st Hussars had DD tanks, the duplex drive tanks that could swim ashore, and some of them did quite successfully. I mean, they were behind time, but they got ashore eventually. I mean, I've done lots of work on this, a little work on the channel, work on World War II TV with Paul Woodage about this live stream from there, about the 1st Hussars. Hopefully I misheard that they were just, putting them right on the shore, because that's not what happened. A few of them were launched out in the channel. So hopefully I just misheard, or this is corrected. I don't know. That's odd.
Canadian Scottish Regiment had been attached to the Royal Winnipeg Rifles to extend their front.
Yes.
Landing on the extreme western end of Juno Beach in Mike Sector, their immediate objective, a concrete casemate housing a 75mm gun, was found to have been knocked out by the bombardment. But the rest of the assault force had no such luck. Companies B and D soon realized that the bombardment had not touched this position, leaving them no option but to storm the position in a frontal attack. Faced with machine guns and mortars, which opened fire while the Canadians were still 700 yards from the beach, many fell as they struggled to exit the landing craft. Joined by tanks, the infantry soon captured the position for a high cost. At the end of this battle, D Company had only 1 officer and 26 men left standing.
High casualties.
Landing with them in support, the 6th Company Royal Canadian Engineers lost 26 men during this assault. Yeah. East of the river,
good to hear engineers getting a thrown out, getting a shout out.
Responsibility of the Regina Rifles Regiment.
Regina, not Regina.
Ran into fierce opposition when it disembarked in front of the strong point.
Yeah.
Company Commander Major Duncan Grosh barely left his landing craft when he was shot in the knee. Men all around him were falling killed or wounded.
This is not footage from them.
Was killed at his side.
This is training footage.
Unable to walk, Major Grosh saw the tide coming in. Knew he would drown if he did not move. Struggling, he crawled towards the seawall, but the tide kept rising. Yeah. Finally, 2 of his men grabbed him and pulled him into the dubious safety of the seawall. The company's second in command, Captain Ronald Shawcross, now took command. As he landed, the 6 men in front of him were cut down by enemy fire. He ran ashore and reached the
seawall with
only 4 other survivors of his platoon. As the company was pinned down on the beach, Lieutenant William Grayson, who was one of the platoon leaders, found a gap in the barbed wire in front of the enemy pillboxes and maneuvered to the rear of a house where he found himself behind the enemy. He raced forward only to be caught by more barbed wire in front of a machine gun team. As he waited for the machine gun to finish him off, nothing happened. Realizing that the gun crew must be reloading the gun or changing the barrel, he tore himself free and raced to the concrete pillbox, where he tossed a grenade inside. The survivors fled, followed by Lieutenant Grayson. They led him to the next fortification, an 88mm gun that was also holding up the Canadians. He followed the fleeing Germans through the trench, armed only with his pistol. And when he reached the position, he was greeted by 35 enemy soldiers with their hands raised. With the machine gun and anti-tank gun out of operation, Captain Shawcross had his men jump the barbed wire and began a deadly race through the extensive German trench system. At the end of the day, Company A had only 28 men left of its original 120. With the initial assault companies ashore, the reserved companies began their deployment to push further inland.
Yep.
Companies A and C of the Winnipeg Rifles encountered stiffening resistance in St-Croix and Banville.
Yep.
The German defenders gave up ground only
Said those
after
right.
the arrival of Bren gun platoons and tanks of the 6th Armored Regiment. Once these villages had been cleared, the Winnipeg Rifles advanced to Courseulles, where they stopped to consolidate a defensive position for the night.
Yep.
Company C of the Regina Rifles moved to
Regina.
Courseulles, while Company D came under fire from German troops who infiltrated back into the trench that Lieutenant Grayson had cleared earlier in his bold dash.
Mm-hmm.
The regiment exited the town late in the afternoon and linked up with the Winnipeg Rifles by nightfall.
Mm-hmm. Keep moving down, I assume.
On the beaches of the 8th Brigade, Company B of the Queen's Own Rifles Regiment landed directly in front of strong point WN-28.
Yep.
And lost 65 men in the first few minutes ashore. Because of the delay in getting the tanks ashore, no armor support was immediately available. Company A landed west of the strong point under mortar fire, but resistance was light and the troops moved inland.
Later.
The reserve companies C and D suffered somewhat from mines attached to obstacles on their way to the beach, but this didn't impede their progress.
A little bit.
Next in line along the beachfront, the North Shore Regiment landed in front of strong point WN-27, which appeared to not have been touched by the bombardment.
No.
Reducing that strong point fell to Company B, supported by Royal Engineers. They encountered a major concrete emplacement with a 50mm gun, machine guns, and 81mm mortars. Steel doors barred the entrance, and every conceivable approach was covered by fire. Using a series of tunnels, the Germans could easily move from position to position without exposing themselves to injury. With the reserve companies about to land, Company B was in need of tank support, but no tanks had yet landed in this area.
True.
C Squadron of the 10th Armored Regiment soon answered the call for help.
The Fort Garry
The
horse.
squadron had already lost 4 tanks. 2 drowned in the surf, another lost its crew to snipers, and the 4th was set afire by an anti-tank shell. 3 more tanks were lost when the commander decided to lead his squadron through a minefield. The remaining 13 tanks entered St. Aubin to support the struggling North Shore.
Okay, yeah, I guess. Sorry, I'm just going to go back there for a second. The DD tanks. Yeah, I mean, he's not talking about them. You should. Explaining that a little bit. It was complicated. But anyway, yeah, there's difficulty landing armor at this part because you can see the reefs here. I mean, he talks about it before. Whoever's making the video. Lands before, talked about the reef before, but now it doesn't seem to factor in, which is interesting because this is where it's at its worst. And the high seas cause problems, and so does the obstacles as the tide rises, particularly on Nan White there. So it's interesting that that's skipped, but we'll keep going forward here.
Infantrymen. While the assault brigades were clearing their respective beaches, the 9th Brigade deployed reinforcements on the Nan White sector. When the landing craft touched down, the beach was so overcrowded that the companies couldn't disembark from their landing craft.
True.
Infantry, tanks, and light vehicles
Very
were
chaotic.
all trying to move towards the exits, and the engineers were still clearing mines and beach obstacles.
Yeah.
The 9th Brigade's ultimate objective was Carpiquet Airfield, outside Caen.
Okay, so I'm going to stop again. It's interesting he mentions that the follow-up companies of the Queen's Own Rifles have trouble with the obstacles and the mines attached to them. He's not mentioning the Regiment de Chaudière, which was the follow-up battalion of the landing brigade. So I'm not sure why he's skipping them. They have trouble getting inshore as well and take casualties coming in. My own great-great-uncle was one of them and killed on the beach or just before. So it's odd. It just skips an entire battalion like that. Hopefully, again, I've made a mistake and he'll say something. But it looks like he's just going to push forward and talk about the further inland objectives that obviously weren't taken. Yeah, there's Carpiquet.
The North Nova Scotia Regiment boarded the tanks of the 27th Armored Regiment and set off for that objective.
Yeah. It hasn't included the Chaudière at all. Sorry.
By nightfall, the entire Canadian 3rd Division had settled into defensive positions. It is well known that the deadliest of the 5 invasion
This is the North
bases
Shore
on
landing
D-Day
here.
was Omaha, where the Americans suffered heavy casualties. But what is not so well known is that the next deadliest beach was Juno.
Technically, depending on the numbers and how you look at it, yeah.
Totaled 1,204
percentage-wise,
and British soldiers.
It's a lot.
And they increased as the troops moved inland.
Yeah, this is actual
Canadians
footage.
had achieved a lodgment with the landings at Juno Beach,
Mhm.
although the battle to secure it would take several more days and require the defeat of several strong armored counterattacks.
Yeah, true. A lot of armor. A lot of armor thrown at them. This was SS that he mentions. So that was an interesting one. Kind of ends there with some German armor. Interesting. Okay, yeah, fairly good. I mean, it's a quick, short one, so there's not so much you can put in. But the things that most stuck up to me are, again, 2 units I've done a lot of work on. The first is ours, not mentioning the DD tanks at all. And then sort of alluding to them with the Fort Garry horse, but not really directly talking about them. That was rather odd. And then just completely omitting the Chaudière, which is odd. I'm not sure why. Would have taken a quick mention to do so because they're part of the advance. It wasn't just another brigade coming through, particularly Bernières-sur-Mer, because of the backup that happened on the other parts of the beach. And that was really the only place that they could get all that stuff in. And you saw some interesting footage there that it is of D-Day and the 6th and Canadians coming ashore there at the end. And also very strange that he omits the, I keep saying he, they, the filmmakers, whoever made this, omits the footage, some of the most famous footage of D-Day, all of it, any of the beaches, because it's one of the few actual, capture of the salt wave coming in. And that's the North Shore there. Further over, they talked about on the extreme flank there of Juno Beach. I don't know why he didn't include that when he was talking about the North Shore. It's very interesting. And then some of that footage, the rest of it is not really from D-Day. It's from later. Like there's a heavy machine gun there, the Vickers being fired. That's actually from taking Carpiquet much later in July. And then there's some from the fighting to close the Falaise Pocket there, the Falaise Gap at Saint-Lambert-sur-Dive. So it's interesting. I think that was worth noting because it's not, footage from then, because there was hardly any footage from then. So it doesn't come till later. But overall, not bad. Not bad. Maybe I'll check out some more from this channel, see if they've got some other good stuff. But that one, yeah, I mean, it's good. It talks about Canada, it talks about Juno Beach and Canadian and all of that. So that's good. Just a few not minor, but it's odd that there's just more omissions that I thought would be really included and weren't. So it's a different kind of issue, I guess. I'm not really sure why these things happened, but they did. So and that's just my 2 cents as someone who's looked at, particularly the landing phases a lot of these beaches and been there myself. It's just interesting that some of these things are omitted. But other than that, again, if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and like the video. It really helps me out a lot. And check out lots of other stuff. I'll link a Normandy playlist below. I include the footage of the North Shore landing, other footage as well, live streams that I've done with other historians, and some just videos I put together myself about the landings. And then I can link as well my appearance on World War II TV, talking about the first Hussars there. And it was a live stream from D-Day from last year. So it was really interesting to see that on the anniversary and see these positions today and everything. And a good chunk of them are still there. So it's really interesting. So definitely check that out and check out World War II TV if you haven't. Tons of good stuff on there. But again, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time when we get the next video.